delight in my socks out there.
Oh, they're lovely, aren't they? They're Christmas socks.
Possibly.
No,
they're more all year round, but they are quite wintry.
You've got a more conservative grey version I can see us peeking out there as well.
Variation on a theme.
Yeah.
The thing being foot.
Theme being a foot warmer.
And on that bombshell, ladies
Boom.
and gents, welcome to Houlihan Chats with me, Matt Houlihan. And I am joined today by Craig O'Brien. How do you spell that?
O space Brian.
There we are, ladies and gents. Say it as you see. That was shite, wasn't it? I don't know where I was going with that. Now, how would you describe yourself, Craig?
Oh, God.
Career-wise and life-wise.
So not in terms of like.
Gosh, this is a heavy question to begin. It's like, tell me about everything that you are.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, that's straight in at the deep end, isn't it? I'm not.
Shall we begin again?
No, I don't mind. I'm not going to do the CV kind of I'm reliable, can work as a team and an individual thing.
Let's start again. Welcome, ladies and gents, to Houlihan Chats with me, Matt Houlihan, and I'm joined today by Craig O'Brien.
Hello.
And how do you spell your name?
It's an O, then a space, and then Brian.
Good. With an A or an E?
Brian.
Now, Craig and I have known each other for a few years. Since 2012?
Yes. Probably.
2012, yeah. The year of the Olympics.
The year that the Shard opened.
Can we mention that building? I suppose we can. Well, we have now.
Is there any other buildings we should or shouldn't mention?
I don't know. Let me get on to legal about that.
Right.
Well, yeah, we worked there for a time,
we did.
Which was fascinating. A lot of artists started up with us, and I found you a fascinating chap.
Thank you, Matt.
What would you say your creative outlets are?
Wow. I mean, that's a big question. I am a poet. I am a writer. I have done a lot of work with sound. I'm very interested in sound art, soundscapes, that sort of thing, found sounds. I had a degree in photography and filmmaking and animation, so I've tried my hand at all of that. I'm still at the plucky age of 40, trying to nail down what it is I am creatively, if indeed that's necessary to do.
Perhaps it was unfair of me to ask.
Not at all. I mean, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But for me, the pleasure it's going to sound rather cliched, but the pleasure is in just keeping experimenting, keeping working, keeping going, keeping writing, keeping thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're alive,
Well, as long as I've got any health. But I mean, it's been strange for me because I didn't really feel like or call myself an artist until relatively later in life. It was never really suggested to me that that's a thing and you can just be that thing. So even from a little boy all the way up to the adult I am now, I was always drawing, always writing, always poetry, always taking photographs, trying to sort of make sense of the world through artistic roots, if you like. But I never really realised that it was that made me an artist. And it was only in the last decade that I've realised, well, that's what I am. Whatever it is I'm getting paid to do. I mean, a lot of artists, certainly in London, have to just do the grind work, if you like, to be able to pay to exist, blah, blah, blah. Whatever I'm doing there is not important to me. What's important to me is how my art is progressing. And it's an interesting question that you ask, what is your art? Because even the form of my art is progressing, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's not like I'm becoming a better poet or a better photographer or a better cartoonist. It's that I'm becoming more full and rounded as an artist as all these things go off in myriad directions.
That's deep.
well,
I love it.
but what do I do is art.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
What would you say? It's a question of reflecting what you experience in life. Would you say it's a question of perception, or I suppose that becomes a big philosophical question, really.
Yeah.
And again, unfair as a question, but I've looked at a lot of your work in the run up to this chat,
Mm-hmm.
and over the years, and I've found it very fascinating, sort of the various subjects that you do touch on,
Right.
and I suppose there's a theme of, perhaps this is just my perception, but there seems to be a theme of like, what is going on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let me know if that's touching on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. What is going on? I mean, I'm guessing that you're sort of referring to the stuff that's like a little bit more political, or a little bit more sociological, a little bit more observational, if you like.
But even things which are philosophical, or some some of your drawings and things that I've seen are very, they're almost what's the word, they're very understated, very subtle, and there's a hint of sinister, but it's very few lines, and I'll share a couple of pictures on the link to this, but it's that thing of there's ambiguity,
Right.
I think.
Right.
That's just what I take from it.
Right.
That sense of ambiguity, that sense of question mark, and what some of it's political, some of it's
and some of it is just for fun. Some of it is there really is nothing else there. It's just that. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes I think that there is a danger with art sometimes to go almost a little bit too deep as the observer, as the audience, and try and find things that the artist, whatever, never really intended, and that's fine.
a statement.
Yeah, but then the question there is, has the artist done his job? If you see what I mean. If it's just a kind of, here's the thing, that's what it is, and then we start looking at it going, well, it could mean this, it could mean that, it could mean the other thing. At what point do we go, whoa there, cowboy, you have to hold on, like you're putting your own thing onto this person's art, and again, that's fine, but has the artist done the job? You mentioned the sinister element. I'm certainly not afraid of the dark. This is something that fascinates and terrifies me, and it's, I mean, if you were to listen to some of the sound work that I've done, for example, I've taken excuse me, I've taken some very, very dark subject matter in terms of audio. So, for example, interviews with serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer, from the monster's mouth, if you like. And I've kind of played with that and put that into soundscapes. And I've been called a sensationalist before, and sometimes that might be true, but you have to remember that I'm still experimenting, I'm still trying to find the truth in these things. But the likes of Jeffrey Dahmer, yes, is, an abstract, is a monster, is something that's out there, but this evil, if you like, this good and evil, I think exists within us all and within society. And you can see this in groupthink, in hive minds. You can see this when one country goes to war against another country. The fact that war is legal in the world means that we have a darkness within us. So I'm not afraid to do that in my humble way, to hold up a mirror and go, be very, very careful which dog you feed inside of you.
Yes.
Be very careful, because we all have, maybe not to the extent of Jeffrey Dahmer, but we all have that capacity to be cruel, to be mean, to be dark,
to be hungry.
To be hungry.
In the case of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes.
And that's a very bad joke, actually. He was a cannibal.
But he was hungry though. He was hungry for something. He was hungry to fill this void, and the way that he did it was, I mean, he was a gay man who was attracted to men, to younger men, to beautiful men, and he wanted to take these men and he wanted to possess them wholly, keep them. So he created these kind of zombie characters, or tried to create these zombie characters out of them.
Oh, of course, yes.
You know, and yes, he ate parts of them, and this wasn't just some frivolous fuck it. This was I've got a craving, I've got a hunger, I need to fill this void, which is what everybody does with certain things. It might be through vices, it might be through creativity, it might be through sex, through family, through friendship, whatever, but everybody has got this thing, this hunger that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
At the point of using somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer in a soundscape is to ask these sorts of questions. What is this hunger? Where does this hunger come from? Do we all have it? To what extent? And how do we feed it?
The parallels in that soundscape with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With I hope so. With
the universal self.
The universal self. I would hope.
Well, it's so funny you mentioned that, and that we went on to that, because I personally have worked on a play written by a very good playwright now, who's doing amazing stuff, and it was about Jeffrey Dahmer. I played Jeffrey Dahmer, and it was called Hungry Heart.
Okay.
So that's very interesting.
You played Jeffrey Dahmer.
Did you not? Did I not tell you this?
No.
It was fascinating. Because doing research into him and looking at the TV drama films about him and stuff, and there's a lot of sensationalism about it, but fundamentally there is a human being there who, and I'm not I don't go in for the thing that this person is insane per se. Who knows. I think it's a very ambiguous, blurred thing to, the definitions of evil and the definitions of what it is to be of sound mind. But fundamentally, there are things about this person that we can identify parallels amongst all of us, And why did that person take that route? And why was that person so troubled?
Yeah.
And that is a fascinating question, and that was some of what our playwright touched on,
What era Dahmer did you play? Was it young Dahmer or post-arrested Dahmer? Or?
No, it was the scene that we did, which was for Valentine's Day. Actually, it was a date with another chap. It's very English of me. With another guy, and I think it was after he'd murdered a couple of people.
Okay.
Gosh, we're talking a lot about Jeffrey Dahmer, but it was absolutely. It was. So
it was just when he was getting going.
It was just when he was getting going.
Warming up, got the taste.
So I think it was, I don't know, was it 80s, late 70s? So that is, that's a fascinating thing, and I need to listen to some of those soundscapes because I haven't heard things like that. I know you touch on sort of contentious issues like, the public debate around paedophilia and things like that. I suppose it's that same fascination with, well, you tell me.
Well, there's a couple of things going on. I mean, basically, like, bring out your golden cow and I'll execute it if I can.
No, seriously, bring it.
If that makes any sense, it's like, I don't think anything is sacrosanct. I don't think anything is off limits for discussion, for debate, for looking at it sideways, or for trying to find the alternative view. If I think that the bigger the group and the louder the group shouts about any one thing, the more you should drill down and look into what it is that's being said. So the fact that paedophilia is this big evil, and of course, like predatory paedophiles going out and young kids, it's despicable, but paedophilia is also just a sexuality. It's also that, and when the Daily Mail masses are routing against paedophilia, what they're actually routing against is predatory paedophiles who go out and act upon it in a very, very cruel way. We have to remember that there's a lot of people in the world who are paedophiles who are probably living in some form of hell because they know that they can't and shouldn't and won't and don't. And their whole sex life, their whole sex world, it's a fucking mess from adolescence to the grave. You know?
That is fascinating, and it seems I mean it sounds like the science is sort of suggests. I mean, a lot of the anecdotal evidence and a lot of the science seems to suggest that it's something that people don't necessarily choose. I mean, I don't really know why anyone would choose that, but there is a lot of evidence that it's something that people have. I mean, there's evidence that people have been traumatized and they've sort of relived that trauma, but also that it's something that they are inclined towards organically, which is a very strange and very compelling subject, really, because it then does become a question of how do we face it socially and how do we define it in relation to predatory activity, because there's a hell of a lot of predatory activity towards grown-up men and women as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing. I listened to this interview by a paedophile, male paedophile. He remained anonymous, and so there's no name there. But he was being interviewed from a respectable sort of standpoint. You know, the psychologist, the doctor, whoever it was that was interviewing was sincerely interested in it. It wasn't for sensationalism, it wasn't for the news, etc. And this chap said something which really sort of stuck with me. And he said, the thing is, I grew up and I sort of knew I was gay, if you like, from a young age. And then, so when I was like 13, 14 in school, I fancied 13 and 14-year-old boys in my school, and that just didn't change. So as he aged, his sexuality stayed there. And this chap was, he says, I've never acted upon it, I wouldn't, I understand and respect the innocence of children and their right to grow up before they start getting sexually active, blah, blah, blah. This guy was like late 30s, a virgin, and would remain so until the day he died, he said. And it was an extremely moving interview to me, an extremely moving thing.
Yes.
I mean, the point is, paedophilia, whatever, any issue, everything has to be taken on a case-by-case basis, everything. You can't just ram all of this stuff together and say, here you go, that's that. Yeah. You just can't do it with anything, and too many people do this. This is what the corporate press is basically there to do. This seems also to be what modern politics is there to do. It's to lump everybody together. You take on this whole bag of opinions and philosophies, and that's you. And I could never do that. And I don't like people that do that. I don't like hive minds. I don't like groupthink. I don't like all of those things. I like artists.
Yes. Yeah, I get the question of identity and the question of compartmentalizing things, because it's easier to understand, or easier to sort of easier to brand things, and whether it's good or bad, or how do I cope with these things, and I think I mean that we seem to be experiencing the sort of the you'd hope the death struggles of that kind of thinking. I suspect it probably isn't a death struggle, but it's certainly a reaction to this day and age. There's a lot of identity based, fear based politics, culture, behaviour in the world, and I think they feed each other. The sort of extremists on various platforms, they kind of have a very similar worldview, I find. I don't know, what do you think?
What do you mean, coming from
for
either
instance,
end of the
for instance, extreme religious, extremists, and sort of, we must protect our nation's border extremists, and aren't those Muslims terrible? But actually, if you look at it, they all kind of seem to try to draw people away from a sort of more balanced view of life and towards an extreme, and they're using each other, I feel, as a sort of excuse to pull people into their constituency of thinking. The Front National or the UKIP.
The UKIPs.
There's something about that kind of mind. It's a very they tend to prefer to simplify things.
They do. People are generally, I think, and this might sound patronising, I was about to say if they realise it or not. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't, but it looks to me like people are afraid. There's fear there that they need to be a part of a bigger group. Maybe this is something to do. This is where I think maybe like the sort of religion and then the political groups might differ, because I think religion very much is and offers that community. You know, if you're part of your local mosque or part of your local church, I think that the community there is very real. I really do. And I think that helps a lot of people in loneliness and fear, you know. Families, you've got an extended family, extended group of friends with shared ideals. You go to the same place every, whatever it may be, Sunday or Friday or whatever. I think the political groups are slightly different. I think they're inventing this idea. So your UKIPs and your EDL, even your Labour, and even the more mainstream Labour, Liberal, Conservative, are offering this idea of an extended family, an extended community. But because what the political parties are also doing is constantly cutting down community and society. There's no such thing as society, Margaret Thatcher said 20 or 30 years ago. There's this weird duality going on where they will take away our local libraries, take away our facilities to actually socialise, and then say, vote for us, join our party. We're the party for community, we're the party for the family, we're the party for this, we're the party for that. What the game is just power. They don't give a fuck about creating a community or a society. They want power to wield in whatever they want. Whereas I think your church, your religious folk, do want to offer you that community. So talking about your extremists, I mean, I've got huge problems with religion, which we won't go into here, but I certainly don't mistake the guy that went onto Westminster Bridge the other week in the car with Muslims at large. That's is it a religious extremist, or is it just a fucking nutter?
Yeah,
Do you know
that's
what
a
I
really
mean?
good point. I mean, from a lot of these people who do things, they seem to be, drinking, gambling, going to clubs and stuff.
That guy was a crackhead, apparently.
There you go. And then they suddenly find this ideology.
Yeah.
And they're like, right, let's kill some people. And the sad thing is it just engenders further fear, further alienation. But then again,
and the political parties just get as much political capital out of it as they possibly can. My heart sinks whenever I see things like that, and it's not because I feel that we're under attack by religious fundamentalists. It's because, oh no, here goes some more of our civil liberties. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh no, here goes some more of our freedom of speech, or our ability to analyse and reanalyse and relook at things.
That's what it serves in the end. That's the end result.